goes off.
Yeah.
Does it just respond to whoever's speaking, or can you actually do that?
Yeah, I might be able to.
That's tricky.
Yeah, you can just move it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Beautiful. Oh, there's
Is
Jane on
it?
the other side.
All right.
It's gonna get you
Oh,
either
no,
way.
It's good. Andy, it was powerful.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
As it should be.
Okay, sorry. So,
I think I was the one that turned, so I wasn't in the middle.
so we are now live, and this is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing. We're up deliberately for the 24 budget, and we have Dr. Caramelli here from the University of Vermont, and also with him is a familiar face, Wendy Koenig. So we're going to get started. Apologize for starting a bit late. We're on the floor late, and as you can see, some of us are going to ask for your indulgence since we eat our lunch.
Please do, please do.
Okay.
Yes, I thought Senate appropriations people didn't have to go to the floor.
It's only in the house.
Anyway, so forth. Thank you, Senator Kitchen. So great to see familiar faces. Actually, it seems like every other committee has lots of new faces. So I just am here to answer questions really and give you a quick update on the state of the university. I think really you're all fairly well read in, but you know, I like to do these one pagers that kind of go to 2 pages, but I call them one pagers still. Just to give you a quick snapshot of the university, I think it's worth remembering because there's so much coming at you. So we have 3,700 plus Vermont students at UVM, and I'm very proud that about a quarter of them are Pell eligible, which means they're at the lower end of the economic spectrum, and a quarter are first-gen students. And so particularly at UVM lately, a number of us are all first-gen in the administration, and so we've been leaning into that and making first-gen students feel more welcome and telling our stories so they feel like that they're not the only ones, etc. And we had over 1,000 degrees awarded to Vermonters last year. So the little box on the
That would include both undergraduate and graduate.
right, yes. And the green box on the right is important to me. A good number of our students, well, almost all of them get employed, which is important. That's why we do that. But the one bit below that, we had 1,155 of our graduates stay and work in Vermont last year. And as you know, we rely on out-of-state students, quite a bit. We attract a good number of out-of-state students. So there's probably 600-700 of them that came from out-of-state and are staying in Vermont. So I think the fact that we're the greatest attractor of a workforce, of a talented workforce to the state, is something that's very important to me, and I think very important for the state. Now, anything we can do to keep them here, sort of longer term, make the state stickier for them is very important, and I know you all think about these things.
Senator Perchlik's got a question.
So the number one is of anybody in Vermont, but you're like, of all any institution or business in Vermont,
yeah, there's nothing, there's no other way, there's nobody else who attracts, over 1,000 people to come into the economy, right? So, yeah.
I didn't know if it was a university ranking, like compared to other schools, but.
No,
Vermont, yeah, makes sense.
no, I mean, Vermont is so different. It's very hard to compare to any other state anyway. So, because most other public flagships recruit mostly from in-state, right? It's a 70 or 80% from in-state most of the time. Ours is different. So, sorry, I missed your question. Just please speak up if I'm not looking at you. The lower part, of course, you all know. If there's anything you know about me or UVM, that we've frozen tuition now for 5 years in a row, and it was no gimmicks. We didn't increase fees somewhere or increase room and board or something. So room and board and fees. Hi there.
How are you?
So we've been able to do it for a 5th year, which I wasn't sure when we started that we could, but last year your generosity was definitely instrumental in allowing us to do that. As you recall, for 14 years, UVM had no change in our base appropriation. It had stayed flat, which means effectively it had dropped by 25% since 2008 or so. And the increase last year that the governor supported and all of you supported brought us back up that 25% to about where we were in 2008. So Without that, I don't know if we could, stayed with this frozen tuition bit, but that was very helpful. And I'll let you look through the other bullets, but let's turn to the other side. Sorry, go ahead, please.
On the UVM promise, is that the same?
Oh, sure.
I can't remember what the state college has a similar program, right?
I don't know why I said that. I'm so sorry. Let me think about the UVM promise. This is the biggest thing that I'm very, very happy that we could do this. It's the second bullet there. We announced just a couple months ago the UVM promise, and so it's a very simple message that any Vermont family making $60,000 or less gets to send their child to UVM, paying no tuition or fee if they qualify, of course. So I think the importance of the simplicity of that message is that UVM was a very good bet for Vermonters, has always been. So 40, 44, 45% attended UVM, paying nothing, et cetera. But I think I'm worried that so many high schools, so many students in Vermont don't go from high school to college, et cetera.
You're talking about our poor continuation rate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's about the worst in the country.
Yeah.
Our high school graduation rate is among the highest, and our, people going on to college is among the lowest, which is kind of sad. And also, I guess, if we're able to say this and get the word out, the important thing is, kids in 8th grade or 6th grade or something don't get to think that, what's the point working hard? I can't afford to go to UVM. This way we say, no, you work hard, get good grades, you'll get into UVM and you'll pay nothing, at least in terms of tuition and fees. So that simplicity of the message, of course, our admissions people, our lawyers and others said, hey, you gotta say this and say AGI. I said, it's not. I said, I'm not gonna say that. If your income is less than 60,000, that's the simple message. Go to the website, it explains more. So I was talking to Senator Sanders yesterday in DC, and he hadn't clued into this, and he suddenly kind of understood what I was saying. And he was very excited, and he told his staff, I'm going to put this on the Bernie Buzz. I don't know what that is, but
We'll find out.
we need this on the Jane Buzz and the Philly Buzz and whatever it is. So I think we need to get the word out.
She stings. She doesn't buzz like us.
So I think just getting the word out. Counselors need to know, the schools need to know. I think we all, the parents need to know. I think it should, and so that might help some of our college going.
No problem.
I've seen this growing, the students not going on. And the problem is our guidance people in our elementary schools right up through, or if that's who's supposed to be promoting going on and further, they're missing the whole show. And I've questioned what their job is for years, but and I've been told that, well, if you're any good at teaching, you can become a guidance counselor. And if that's true, it's sad, but because it shouldn't be.
The counselors have an extremely important and impactful role in students' lives. My own kids' counselors, I think if you had left it to them, I don't think they'd be doing what they were doing today, but they had me. Many families don't. And so I think counseling is very important.
Well, one of the things that we have done through VSAC is try to get more connection with the middle school to start thinking about, in a more aspirational way. Not necessarily has to be 4-year degree. It could be 2. It could be a certificate program.
Yeah.
About thinking about grade 12. It can't be the end.
I think VSAC fills a very important role. I'm very impressed with what VSAC, Scott Giles, the others do. And they have to fill in where there are gaps, and just not let people fall off that wagon too early in their lives. So anything we can do to grow, and they don't all have to come to UVM, right? But it's, and that's where I was very insistent that we grow our partnerships with CCB and VPC, et cetera. I think we had 8 or 9 pathway programs with CCB when I came 3.5 years ago. And now we have there's no program, I think, in CCB that doesn't have a pathway program. To us, it's 35 or some such number of pathway programs, which means they can, go pay less and educate themselves at CCB and then come to us. And those that then come to us have a greater retention rate, a greater graduation rate. They do really well. So I'm very supportive of that as well.
What about the senior year program? Does UVM participate for high school
Early
seniors?
Dual enrollment? Yeah.
Well, it's not only just dual enrollment,
Early
but
college.
early college.
UVM doesn't do early college.
We don't do early college.
Dual enrollment, I guess. Yeah.
Dual
So-
enrollment.
So the UVM promise is a very big deal, and anything you all can do to help us get the word out, we would love to see that. I don't know the details of the Vermont.
I think it's the same. They have a similar program. I just wondered if it was also 60,000, just so that the message was
I think it
clear.
was announced after we announced, but there was some differences, I can't quite tell.
Okay.
Other public flagships that have done this in other states all get money from the state. We chose to do this by ourselves because it's the right thing to do. So, and that's going to stay, whatever else we do. So the backside of it, again, just the economic engine, part of the UVM thing. We have over 4,000 faculty and staff employed. Payroll, what we pay the staff and faculty or our people is over $300 million. We did a study 2016 or so that the impact of UVM on our community was 1.3 billion. I think it's a lot more now because our research funding has grown. Last year we crossed $250 million in research funding for the first time. This is a very big deal for Vermont because all that money is spent here. We recruit very high-end talent here. We solve problems of great interest to the state. Think of the kinds of things we work on: rural addiction, small-scale sustainable food systems and farming. We've got the Gun Institute for Environment. Of course, we all care a lot about that. We've got agroecology. The board just approved an Institute for Agroecology that I think can do really well. And then most excitingly, Senator Leahy helped us get an appropriation for our new Institute for Rural Partnerships. I think no other top school in the country thinks about rural stuff. And so that was my conversation with Senator Leahy, and that we do carbonation and we could do more in that space, be a model, a pilot for other parts of the country, other parts of the world on how to, because so much of the world is rural, really, so much of the US is rural. And so, and it encompasses everything. The point is we would use federal dollars to be the support structure for all of our organizations, nonprofits, companies, whatever, farms that they don't have the wherewithal for. They want to file for some intellectual property, they want to do some commercialization, they want to apply for an SBIR grant, whatever it is, we will support them through this Rural Partnerships Institute. So we'll be kicking it off formally in a few months with a nice event, etc. But I hope you'll all help us with that, guide it in the right direction to see what all we can do there. So all of these things, right, are supported by this $250 million research besides medical work and cancer and all this stuff. So it's very good for Vermont. And of course, we've got a large alumni base in the state, 35,000 people are UVMers.
Including offenders here.
Including our own and those that aren't, I know want it to be, so that's, we can still take it. So the last thing I think I'll just say, I know because this is something I think a lot about, and I know Senator Bruce and I had a conversation some time back, housing is a big deal, childcare is a big deal, talent, just numbers of people, workforce, these are all huge issues. And amongst that talent thing is teachers and nurses and doctors and such. So I wanted to put in numbers there for you about UVM's role there. It shows you that 33% of the physicians in Vermont are educated at the Long College of Medicine. And if you look at the primary care physicians, 41% are from UVM. Then on the teaching side, 80% of those that go through licensing stay and work in Vermont. Our teachers, 80% of our graduate students in nursing and health sciences, and 50% of our undergraduates stay in Vermont. So we are really a very big provider of these extremely essential resources. Senator Sanders has been a big supporter of that whole nursing thing. He's been talking about it. There's been some support financially that he's been able to provide us. But also his Willie pulpit is very important. I just, as I said, met with him yesterday. We talked about some more things we could do. but he brought Dennis McDonough, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, to a college of medicine. We had a great conversation in that space. Community health centers. He is, ever since he's been talking about it, we've been able to get more placement of our nursing students in the community health centers. So there's been some good things that have been happening, but I thought I'd give you
Well,
that
we've been
sense.
trying to do that with our preceptor and supporting that as well.
Right, right.
And expanding where those
Yeah.
sites can be recruited. One of the things I'm interested in, your 80% licensure in College of Education and social, if we're training the educators of tomorrow, it seems like we ought to train them about the importance of continuation and encouragement and mentorship. You know, because we're talking, it doesn't have to fall to the guidance counselor who might be available dealing, or might be dealing with so many other things. It just should be inherent in how we teach and how we inspire and how we think about education. So I would hope that we could do more in terms of how important that is and the role any educator plays in that. So I would use that as an opportunity to,
Right.
as a strategy to improve the continuation rate. The other thing, which I've mentioned before, and that is today's classrooms are so different, and the behaviors that teachers are having to deal with. And I still feel that we don't adequately prepare teachers to how to identify and how to manage behaviors without escalating them. And can I help you do it?
No.
Oh, okay. And so it seems to me that's such an important, and that's not new. Nancy Chard.
Nancy was great.
Nancy was very great, and she was the one, a former senator from Brattleboro.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things she kept saying, we do not adequately train the classroom instructor how to manage, and as a result, it gets mismanaged, it gets escalated, or kids end up getting sent out of class, which only compounds, and then we give them a paraeducator and wonder why we're not doing well.
Right. You know, I will, but do you want to speak briefly about, so this whole mental health training and things, do you want to say a little about what you were saying?
Sure. So we've had a request from some members of the House to put together a proposal for a psychiatric nurse practitioner program. So that's on the table. We're looking for potentially some funding for that, but it's trying to put about 22 people into the workforce within 18 to 24 months. It would be taking existing nurse practitioners and training them to be psychiatric nurse practitioners. But then the other thing about College of Education and Social Services, so we're looking at mental health from the medical perspective, but also the amount of social workers that we train is very high as well. And we had a conversation earlier today about embedding those folks in schools and how we can better work on that. Yeah, and so we have a new dean of our College of Education, Katie Shepard, who is really great, and she's trying to work
Is it
on
education and nursing? Is it
Education and social
services.
education, social?
Nursing
So
and health
it's-
sciences.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I knew that one had been combined.
Yeah. And so I think I'll share with you a piece that she's put together that shows how all of our teachers and social workers are engaging with K through 12 schools in Vermont. She made a 3-page list of all the things that we're doing. It might be useful for you guys to have it as a reference.
You know, one of the things, and we all get it, is the quarterly magazine from the College of Medicine. And I found the last edition very interesting. There was an article about the impact a consultant by the name of Abraham Flexner came and consulted with universities around the country how to reduce costs. And one of his proposals was to close down the number of medical programs, College of Medicine. And in New England, it would just be Harvard and Yale. At that point, UVM had a medical college, as did Bowdoin and Dartmouth. And UVM decided not to take that bit of recommendation. And Dartmouth did. and had like a 2-year program because my cousin did it, then had to go to Harvard to get his MD. And then both closed down. Dartmouth closed down for about 60 years, and now obviously is issuing the degree. But the other thing is the result was like almost half the colleges that educate Black physicians
Yes.
were closed down. And you think about today, the implications that that has for our, for not only racial disparities, but also our shortage. And the same thing, hospitals routinely have nursing programs, RN programs, and they train nursing, and they were really some of the best nurses. And then we closed them all down and relied on, you know, the more academic institutions to pick it up. So we constrained our ability to generate the supply of nurses that are necessary to meet the demand. So it's sort of a instruction, a decision you make today can have really far-reaching implications in terms of what you do and what it might mean in terms of its long-term impact. Anyway, I found it a fascinating article, but it
It was
shows
a
you.
great article.
Huh? Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, but anyway, I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. But it just brought home, you know, when we're grappling with racial disparities as it relates to healthcare, and the fact that we have a shortage of physicians, particularly primary care.
We made our share of mistakes, but luckily that was not one, so that's. good.
Yeah, no, UVM, yeah.
I think you had a question.
I did. I was going back to you were talking about the social work program, but also the mental health counseling program, which is certified. And is there any way to expand that? Just knowing what our mental health needs are in the state, both for kids and for adults as well. I don't know.
So I think that's part of the.
That's part of the discussion, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
But it's not simply it's not the medical environment, it's not nurses, but it is mental health counselors. And of course, everyone, we're beginning to see integration of social and medical, but it's really important to continue.
Sure. There's such a shortage of mental health professionals too, even if you want to hire them.
Scary.
So you know, we struggle with that. And luckily, I mean, I think we still have as many appointments as people want, but not all appointments as we're taking, but we keep adding to our mental health capacity in our CAPS program, et cetera. So it's a big thing, and I think it was great that this morning the House Appropriations raised the question about what would it take to, you know, could we, for example, forgive their loans if they work for 5 years, over a 5-year period, and what would it take? So I said, well, let us model it. Maybe we start small, maybe we say for 10 or 12 people, it will cost this much in nurses and teachers and counselors or something, and then see if that's something.
Well, the other issue that is so critical, not for clinical placement and preceptorships, but other things is the use of, I was going to say telehealth, but Zoom, just overall, using the internet for connecting. And are there any programs at UVM that are predominantly done through internet, online? Or is that, because I know that CCV has a strong commitment to online courses and so on, but are there any programs that are delivered off campus that are?
So, I mean, I guess there's not directly related to the mental health question, but a couple of years ago, we decided to really double down on our professional continuing education area. It's called PACE now, professional continuing education. We brought in a colleague who was a provost at the University of Oklahoma. She's been amazing. She's actually testifying to the Commerce people right now. Angela Irvine, she's really, really good. It's brought a whole fresh focus on sort of professional education, which can be credit, non-credit, it can be certificates, it can be just-in-time training, etc. And in fact, this whole upskill program that you know about has been such a success, right? We've had it for 2 years now, and each time the moment we open up for registration for those things, the upskill program lets people take a class or two at UVM at no cost to them, right? To increase their skills, to learn something new, to try to sort of try something so that they can get a different job. And within 24 hours, give or take, all the slots were taken. So there really is a lot of demand for this. And then they could potentially consider doing other certificate programs, other degrees, etc. So we do have in our budget request for this year a 3-year, $3 million ask for the upskill program. So one-time ask.
In
$1
the
million.
governor's budget?
It's in the governor's budget. It's $1 million a year for 3 years. The nice thing is the last 2 times we had them 1 year at a time. By the time the money comes, it has to be spent within 6 months, and it wasn't the best way to do it. So we said if we can have a 3-year window, it can be planned better. In fact, we've reoriented the classes we offer through it in healthcare and project management and leadership. These are the things people are asking for. We put a lot of options out there first, but we looked at what they most care about. And I think the upskill program is great. It's a small amount of money to really re-train people who want to train themselves and such. As you know, you should put any extra money you've got in that program. I think it's just a pass through for UVM, but I think it's really touching a lot of people. So we do a lot of that. We've grown. I mean, obviously, COVID made heroes of every one of our faculty members, even those that thought they couldn't teach online, all were able to do it. We've gone back to
Even our colleague at the end of the table?
He's the best professor we have. Yeah, so that's all I'm going to say.
It's worth a donation.
Yes.
I guess he won't be debating your appropriation.
There you go.
No?
I have never been shy, but I definitely appreciate the compliment.
You
So
talk
I do
about
think
shy.
it showed a lot of us what we could do. It expanded the possibilities. I think that many of our professors record their classes so that even if you have students in class, sometimes they want to go back and play it again and listen to it more slowly or whatever else, or go back to one piece. I think all these are positives that come out of COVID. There's a lot of other things that were not so positive.
I just wanted, before you leave, I just wanted to thank you for the 5 years with no tuition increase. I think that's the single most important thing we've done financially in terms of positioning the university. And I have heard from students about it. I just think on the State University side and the UVM side, there was a period where we had drifted into pricing ourselves out of the market and didn't know how to find our way back. So President Sullivan and you, I think, are really to be commended for that, because I know it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, we had increases before I was here, 3% to 6% or so. And the point is, our expenses increased by about $10 million a year. So you got to do something about it. People have to be paid their raises, or health insurance costs go up. But how do you live within your means? And we've also decided, and we made it very clear to everyone, that our incoming class, our new student number, remains about the same. It's about 3,000 a year. That's what we take. It can fluctuate a bit because it's not an exact science in terms of how many students you admit and who takes it. Especially COVID screwed things up a little bit. It's harder to predict. The models got a little out of whack. But enough, we had a little bit of an uptick. But really, I mean, we had 3,100 students back in 2017 or something, well before we went down this path. My first year here, we said let's freeze tuition, let's freeze room and board, let's freeze fees. And we're not doing that by increasing numbers, right? There's been some misunderstanding there. We do it by refinancing debt. We do it by refinancing our drug prescription policy, but still providing the same kind of benefits and so on. So I think there's good ways of doing it. This 5th year that we announced, I mean, again, the legislature's help was very, very instrumental there. So we'll see how long we can keep doing it. But we're no longer in the top 3 most expensive schools in the country, which is great. We're a little bit below the action.
You mean in terms of state universities?
Yeah, public universities.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Bard's number 1,
Well,
followed by Bowdoin, I think, or Bates. Yeah, used to be.
publics.
I remember, I think it was your first year, you announced or even before you got there, recruitment, the community engagement. I can't,
That's going really well.
I just wondered what the update is on.
Yeah, so we started an office of engagement, Jane and I, so Senator Kitchen and I have had many conversations about it. The legislature helped us with some seed money, as you know, and I think it succeeded way beyond my expectations. It's really been owned by everybody in Vermont now. We have a map that shows every one of our 14 counties, and you can click on it and see all the things we do, and Wendy can share a link with your committee. So we've talked to so many of the CEOs and NGOs and nonprofits and everything else across the state. One focused effort that I think is very important was in growing internships, right? So if we are looking for employees, I think the least useful thing is to go to students when they're graduating in their fourth year and say, come work for us. They've already found jobs in Boston or New York or something, and they wouldn't stay. But I think if we can engage them in their first year, second year, and show them internships in, across the state, they start kind of imagining life here. And I think it has been shown to increase the stickiness to the state. So we had a 75% increase in the number of paid internships for our students in the first year, and that's been continuing. So it's become a very active part of the community. We work with, Matt Dunn and all the different organizations across the state, Secretary Curley and so on. So there's so many connections there. And now with the Institute of Rural Partnerships, it's been I think you'll see that this was probably, we'll look back and see the Institute for Rural Partnerships as one of those watershed moments when something big happened in Vermont. And so those two will work together. Engagement is broad, rural partnerships will be more focused on helping organizations, et cetera. But it's going really well. And we're funding it ourselves, and because we would give us but it'll keep going. I'm very committed.
Well, you said we gave you a chance, you'd be able to take it from there.
It's
And
going.
rose to the challenge.
We rose to the challenge.
Does UVM have workforce challenges? We spent part of the morning in judiciary talking with DCF staff and Department of Corrections staff where they have huge vacancies.
Yeah.
And I know the Agency of Transportation also has a number of, vacancies. Do you have that same challenge?
It's a great question, Senator Sears. So thankfully, our faculty recruitment has been strong. For the last 2 years, we've full-time faculty, or about 140 or so faculty hired those 2 years, even during COVID. Happily, about a third of them or more have been faculty of color. So with that, we didn't put quotas or anything. It's been very successful. There are pockets of UVM that are very challenged. Our dining services. Sodexo was down 50% in staff. That's really.
I could come over and help them.
Medical colleges are actually using paper plates because they can't get people.
In fact, that's not even just something to
Is there
say,
a
but
correlation between free tuition and lack of staff at dining hall?
no, this is Sodexo. It has nothing to, Sodexo is a different organization.
Yeah.
And as I said, the frozen tuition hasn't done anything in terms of, it hasn't come off of these kinds of things. Of course, if we had more money, could we do more? We could.
No, I mean the number of students who might be seeking a job as a result of things. Yeah,
good
so if they have free tuition, maybe they don't need to go work at the cafe.
Well, it's an interesting question. We are helping Sodexo connect with our students more. Actually, we are
Also,
taking
they
the
can
lead
earn
role
money.
to earn money. So we're connecting them, and that's helped. How much, I don't know, but it's moved the needle a little bit. So our own students are working there.
What are the biggest challenges for you in staff?
So as I said, Sodexo is a big deal. The trades, right? I mean, some of our physical plant employees and things like
You
that.
can't get a plumber either?
Well, these folks are, older, they're gonna retire, who's replacing them? So we're actually, Richard Kate, our CFO, is engaging in apprenticeship programs that we support so that we train people to take those on. That's gonna be a challenge. But there's another side to this, right? Then that's housing. we've had staff members take jobs at UVM, say yes, and walk away. There were 5 or 6 I heard about just last year because they couldn't find housing. And so that whole thing is a really big challenge for Vermont, even bigger challenge for Chittenden, even bigger for Burlington. And so we are doing all we can to lean into that problem. And during COVID, it was very hard to get developers to think about this. But as soon as COVID started receding a little bit, we started these conversations. So now we have almost 600 new beds that are going up. I think ground is being broken as we speak.
Is that Trinity?
And no, that's in South Burlington, in the city center. So, South Burlington, I mean, if you just hear about South Burlington, you think, oh, that's far away. But the line to South Burlington goes right almost through campus, right?
Terrace Street in South Burlington is right here.
So it's closer than Redstone campus.
Used to be one city,
Right,
yeah,
well,
it
so.
wasn't long ago.
So we were going to have about 490 beds. Now we've been able to increase that to about 590. And we were going to have a chunk of those delivered in 2024, some in 25 and some in 26. We've been able to work with the developer to finish the project by 2025.
Will that do faculty housing as well?
It's faculty, staff, and graduate students.
Oh.
Okay, that's the target. There are apartments that are, meant for that. And so hopefully our staff will be able to rent, our maybe starting faculty will be able to rent grad students. And South Burlington has, I believe, required that the ground floor, the main floor, should be commercial space. So we're encouraging the developer to try and bring in childcare into that space, etc. So that's been a declared project. We're working with a number of other development
So what
operations.
is like the average salary, say a new, I don't know, if you don't start off as a full professor, you start out as a lecturer, you start assistant professor. What is the starting salary?
It depends very much on your department.
Well, I'm sure it does. Probably.
Ruth makes a lot of money, but not.
I'm sure, probably,
English versus-
probably the science, some of those, but,
Well, we go by we pretty much we pin these things to the median in the country. But
say
it does
the liberal,
depend.
say the liberal arts, which, would
Yeah,
that be about 75, 80?
Just, yeah, I mean, not in my department, but yeah, generally, I mean, I'm thinking religion and English have traditionally been the lowest compensated for people starting. But it's been, I started at 30,000 when I came in, and I was
That's
off.
100 years ago.
Oh, no, I started
snapped
at
at
50, I started state employment at 5,400.
I can tell you my starting salary too. Doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
He was making out like a bandit.
I guess, apparently. Oh,
So I do think that, just to your point, just if I may add, the benefits of UVM are very strong, and that attracts people too, in particular the tuition remission. So our faculty and staff can send their kids to school at UVM paying nothing at all.
Yeah.
And so that's a big deal, especially for our custodial workers and stuff. I have talked to a lot of custodial staff who, husband is working in a bakery or something, this person is doing some custodial work, and she says, I'm doing this because I'm being paid an enormous amount of money if you count in the tuition I don't have to pay. So I think those things are important too. But housing is a big deal.
No tax either, right? If you went and earned $5,000, you'd have to pay a tax.
Oh, there's no tax on the free tuition, you say?
On tuition.
I've talked to several folks that have left Central Vermont to go work for UVM when their kids were getting college age.
Right. Yeah, I think that tuition, so many
Is there
places,
reciprocity between UVM and other universities? So for
Vermont
that faculty, that used to be fairly common, but
reciprocity in what way?
free tuition. So if your child wanted to go to University of Pennsylvania, is
No.
as a faculty,
Not
you go.
necessarily.
Reciprocal with the Vermont State College system.
There used
That's-
to be a list of places in other
They do it.
states that we had reciprocity.
University of Pennsylvania has more money than that, they don't.
Well, I know, but that's the one that came to mind. I don't know.
Anything we do comes on the backs of our out-of-state student tuition, right? So we have to be very careful
Mhm.
what we offer,
Like
because
Senator Sears.
most of our budget is salaries and wages, and most of it is fed by out-of-state tuition. So
We call that
Anytime.
cross-subsidization.
But we are always cognizant of, you want a new desk, it costs $8,000. Would you rather do that or let a student get free tuition,
We
right?
can
So-
understand that because we do that here
Yes, I'm
all
sure.
the time.
So I think that's important.
No, make decisions.
That's why we don't have any desks.
Only
Prior senators gave them all away.
If you spend it here, you spend it there.
But workforce is a big deal. But IT and things like this are tricky, right? Cybersecurity experts, I mean, they're being hired everywhere. So there are specific areas that are harder.
Yeah.
We're leaning in a little bit to look at which areas we can allow remote work. UVM is a residential campus. Students come here because they love Burlington and the experience. So we can't do a lot of things remotely, but maybe our IT services, maybe some research support services can be remote, and we have been making use of some of that. So we'll have to see. I hope it doesn't get any worse than it is.
Other questions?
So our asks this time were, as I said, the 3 million for upskill over 3 years. That's a one-time ask, and a 3% increase in our base, which is what the governor was asking other state agencies to do, and he has put it in his budget. 3% of our base is about $1.5 million, just 1.52 or so. So that's in his budget, I believe, and I'm very thankful for that. And I hope you will all bless it and we will
Senator Starr.
continue to call you the best professors.
I think maybe the last time you were here, we were talking, I think you told us that you get over 30,000 applicants. And I don't know, was it here?
It's true. So 30,000, this for the fall class.
Yeah,
We had over 30,000 applications. And what that did, well, besides, so that's for 3,000 slots, right? So what that does is to let us construct a class with the largest, this time we had the largest number of first generation students, the largest number of students of color, and thankfully the largest number of, well, more students from beyond New England than ever before, over 50%. And that's critical because there aren't enough high school students graduating in New England, right? The number that really scares me is that 2010, there were 7,200 high school graduates in Vermont. 2020, there were 5,500. We don't even count that correctly. These are projections back. But 7,200 to 5,500 drop in one decade. So we will do the best by Vermonters.
Well,
but
our birth rate is going down. It's anemic.
That's right.
And,
You know that questionnaire you were filling out?
The one I said not applicable.
the issue that I wanted to ask was, we talked, I believe, about you send rejection letters or to the ones that don't make it. But we talked a little bit about saying, well, there are other Vermont colleges that you might be interested in. Has that ever been able to be worked out?
Sorry, question is distracting.
Because he knows exactly what I'm referring to.
Yes. So we did do something not quite that. So we started a program called Catamount Experience this year. It's going really well. So this is students who didn't quite make it in, where we tell them that, hey, come in, take classes as a cohort. We will give you all the support services. For those of you who know Burlington, they all stay as a cohort in Spinner Place.
Yeah.
They love it so much that they don't want to come back to campus, actually. So, and most of them are doing really well, and they all matriculate into UVM. So we're trying to support them to up their skills a little bit, do better, increase their GPAs, and get.
How many per year?
This was a pilot start, so we have 32 or so, I think.
You know,
Something. So-
Cornell does something similar, and that is, that oftentimes you have really students that have a lot of potential, but they've been a little lackluster.
That's
A
right.
lot of them are males, to be honest. And so what they have is a sort of
She looks
very.
kind of serious as she says that. Okay.
Yeah, this isn't new.
No, it's not.
This was there in 1966.
Oh, my gosh.
Like that then.
No, but I'm still back on that article about failure to launch, and that has to do with our dismal
Yes.
success rate, particularly for young males in school. And so they have, it's basically, you go to, maybe a community college, or, you know, maybe a state college or whatever, and then you're guaranteed admission, you're at the end of your sophomore year, if you keep your grade level up. So it's a way of giving sort of a pathway into the, in this case, to Cornell, but, so it was, I thought it was kind of interesting because you do have a certain attrition rate.
Sure.
And, in spite of your best review of applicants, and it was kind of keeping a pipeline of students, in those maybe junior and senior year, but who had the opportunity to prove themselves academically.
Right. I think that's great, and that's the CCD pathway,
Yeah, I
right?
was gonna
That's
say
why
very similar.
I really care about strengthening those. VTC has those as well, because these students, if they can just find their bearings, they do really well when they come to UVM. They graduate at higher rates, they retain at higher rates, they perform better. Their average GPA, I think, is even better than the others. So, so I think there's things like this we're trying, but I think we should keep trying. This male-female ratio thing is a huge problem. It seems politically incorrect to talk about it, but I think it's kind
Well,
of.
I can talk about it. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like now we're seeing 60%,
It's 60-40, female, male across the nation.
even
And
in
UVM.
law and medicine and.
And the same with dual enrollment.
Right. At UVM, it's far more skewed than 60-40.
Is
I
it?
won't tell you the numbers, otherwise you'd be scared. So
For applications or
enrollment, the number that the students.
Are we
in-
at 70-30?
So we're about 67-33. So.
You know, I don't know what it is, but my son does some teaching.
We'll take
And,
it, we'll take it.
well, he's a Paleo-Indian archaeologist. I don't think
You
you
know
have a spot
archaeology
for him.
or in
Huh?
anthropology and
So
such.
do you, anthropology? And his wife teaches at Salve Regina. And he said that the boys just they have just a different attitude. He's like, culturally, what has happened? It's kind of a question, but
Yeah.
said in terms of their willingness to apply themselves, it's dramatically different, and that gender separation. And so
I think it happens in K through 12.
and
It happens very early.
something is happening there. Yeah.
And it's hard to correct it. I'm on the National Science Board. We were just having a big panel discussion on the K through 12 education and what will help the teachers. And it's got to be a partnership with the Department of Education and such, but it's so local, right? The control is so local that it's very hard to actually influence K through 12. You can in states like across the nation.
No,
already
no, I think I think
This
we
is
have
something to worry
limitations.
a lot about.
I do. I think we're seeing it.
Right. So the asks are please less the 3% and the 3 million, and we'll come back again next year and give you good news. So we're a good bet. I don't think there's a better bet than us.
Well, I want you to know I've got my seeds starting already.
Good, okay, that's good, all right. Hot peppers. This is what we-
I do have hot peppers.
Okay.
We
should drive by.
In the
She's
fall.
got the Carolina Reaper growing out.
No, that's
That's
too
all.
hot for anybody. Reason.
Aki Ponca I've got, and Bercoto, and I can't remember.
Do you even
Aki
eat
Lima.
those or you just kind of shoot?
I don't eat them, my son does. I love growing them,
Grow.
just like I don't like eggplant.
Wow.
And I had those beautiful, they
Yeah,
were
those are-
orange, little ones like that. They're gorgeous.
We'll take them.
You have the ahi amarillo.
I do have that too. And Padron and Bercoto, yellow and red.
We're still recording?
This is like a seed kettle.
I am. Uh-huh.
So, but we'll come back.
Well, President stopped by my house and with Wendy and loaded him up with
Yes,
vegetables.
onions and- Oh, various varieties.
Yeah.
Love it, yes.
Well, thank you for a nice way to end our Friday afternoon here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for you to, I know we're not going to adjourn yet, Stephanie. Stephanie has a couple of amendments that we need to.
Wendy controls the weather now that we can drive back. She'll fix it.
All right.
Thank you all for having us
Thank
here.
you.
Anytime
Thank you.
can answer questions.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Wendy.
Great. All right.
See you soon.
Yeah, I got your telephone.
All right, bye-bye. See you soon.
So Stephanie had identified two areas where we need a technical amendment. One, where we need technical amendments. One is on the childcare, and the other has to do with the pension investment.
And Brady's our director on them.
Okay. So we would offer these and put them in the calendar before third reading. I don't think they're at all controversial.
So there are two issues, but there's several sections. First issue is, it turned out that the administration last year, in FY '23 is the first year that the VPIC was standalone to the treasurer's office. But the accounting in the Vermont State Retirement System, the municipal retirement system, and the teacher's retirement system, you see these first three sections, they didn't get caught up in those sections for the VPIC. And the sheet I handed out shows that. The treasurer amount stayed in, but the VPIC piece that moved out didn't stay in those line items. So if you have this sheet, the one that looks like this,
We do.
you can see, that's why we're changing those three sections, because in '22, it was a total of $12 million that was coming out of the pension funds for admin and to pay the fees for the managers. That was dropping to 4, but that 4 only represented the treasurer's office remaining cost and not the VPIC cost. And so what this amendment would do is bring those sections into the true up for accounting. And I only heard about this at the end of the day on Wednesday from finance and management. So that's what is involved in the draft that you have from Grady in the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and the Fifth Amendment. Oh, did you do these in two separate?
Yeah, we
Two
don't have
separate
the third
pages.
and the fourth yet.
Okay.
Oh, you're talking about language?
I'm talking about language. So,
I only have the childcare loan.
oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, I thought you were doing all in one packet. I didn't realize you were doing
Oh,
two
did I?
separate
I hope I
packets.
didn't. Why don't we do,
What
why
about
don't we do,
pension system language on,
Does everyone, so not everyone has pension system language?
no, I only
Okay.
have student loan repayment.
Okay, sorry.
Did I throw it out by mistake, right?
No,
It's
no.
even here on the
No,
top.
they got, no,
No, but I have more copies, so it's stable though.
This is a different.
So it should start with inserting a section 1A is the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Sorry, there are 2 pages, it doesn't stable.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
So that's.
that goes
Oh, yeah.
next.
Okay. So,
Now we got, did you get? I think,
Well, she says the same thing. Jim.
Yeah, so there should be 2 documents, the one with the number section, one with student loan repayment assistance.
yeah,
so pages 1 and 2 of those.
Just, yeah, everyone have both of those documents?
If
so
not,
one's a 4-page document and the other is a 2-page, a 3-page document. And the 4-page document is what would bring the true up in these pension administration to reflect what we have already appropriated in VPIC. And that's all it's doing.
okay, so it's just getting the money in the right place.
Yeah, bringing the appropriations that feed this up where something was omitted last year. That's all that's happening in that. And we can, if you have questions on the floor on it, we have the spreadsheet that can walk it through from
All right.
2022 to 23 to where we are.
All right, so that's really getting technical. Comfortable with that, so we can publish it? All right, now it's the student loan repayment assistance.
I only have 2 pensions.
Okay, does somebody else have an extra student loan?
Who wants another pension? Ah, I got that.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So we got tossed.
Okay.
So,
Is it gonna be one set of minutes?
Do we all have-
I got it.
we all have the student loan now?
Now we're good.
Okay, so, yes.
So the student loan piece is, this is a recommendation basically from Katie McGlynn and the Ledge Council. We had done this and it came out of the House this way as part of the statute. But because of the nature of what it is, her recommendation is we don't do it that way, we do it as a piece of session law. So we would simply replace section 88, striking the section D essentially that created this, do the exact same thing that section D is doing in a new section 88A as session law, and that's a legal recommendation from council.
So nothing changes except we're
Nothing
making it
changes.
session law rather than a change in the statute.
Yeah, it just affects two sections of the bill. We have to amend one section that's in your version of H 145 by taking out the D that we created and adding a new section that does what D did in session law. And that's all those do. And we would put those in the calendar and they'd be there for Tuesday.
Everybody okay with these two? They're
Yes.
pretty,
Yeah.
I don't think they're terribly controversial. The other, I do believe we need to think about, I know Senator Sears, this may not work for you, but I expect we're getting an amendment, been told that we'll be getting an amendment to extend the full emergency housing for everybody through June 30th. And that will be coming in, I think, Tuesday morning.
Yep.
So we can, I'm just telling you in advance, I think this is asking us to revisit a decision that we spent a lot of
Yep.
time trying to sort out. And as a courtesy, the person who intends to offer it, Senator Mahovsky, said that she would present it to us. And I know, Jake, that you're probably not gonna be here in time, but I told her to come about 9:15.
That's been shot. We have a thing over there, but you're not gonna be there.
I know.
But I'll be back for that.
So, we can, I don't have it, but in advance, I'm assuming in light of how much time we spent in trying to divvy up and make sure we were making progress on making more emergency housing capacity was a top priority, that we would not do that as a friendly amendment. But just to let you know, and she was very kind to alert me that that's what she'd be offering. I don't know whether there will be other senators who be part of that amendment possibly.
I suspect there'll be a few.
Yeah.
But I think
I think today, though, obviously, having the BAA come out the way it did, and I think generally speaking, there was appreciation for how we tried to balance everything out and support, but I know that, and it's hard unless you're seeing what's not in the 24 to start thinking about which we're focusing on at this point. So other people have probably a different picture of what 24, but I do know that 24 is going to be some difficult times, because the more you want to continue these programs and benefits that were federally funded means that would convert to a base expenditure. And we already know that we are going to have to deal, or at least some of us feel we have to deal with the fact that the budget that's been proposed has absolutely no increase for our mental health treatment system and our youth services and our residential care facilities. And so 3% the University of Vermont gets, but we're level funding the very organizations we depend on to support, services to our most vulnerable Vermonters. So if you want to use it to, have an open door in one place and expect we're going to continue that program under GA, the base cost of that is enormous. And I don't think, that this committee has to evaluate, there's no increase for REACH-up.
you said something today.
I did.
Struck me on the floor. You said that we spent 350 some odd million on housing and 200 and some odd million on hotels.
200, about 200 by the time you're done.
Okay, so if you say that, it's like me renting a condo up here if I'd known I was gonna stay 30 years, I probably have bought a house. So I've been, you're throwing that money, it's in motels, it's gone. I'm sure the motel industry likes it,
They
but
do.
that, I didn't realize that till you said that on the floor. I thought that was very effective. The 200 million is gone.
gone,
Right. I
disappeared.
think it bears.
If we had been able to reinvest that 200 million into housing, how far ahead would we be?
We
Well,
had,
Obviously, we had a real problem we had to deal with.
Or a percentage of it.
At least we could
Just the
have
way
done
we're
is
doing
bought
the
the
2
motels.
whatever.
2.5.
Right.
Anyway, that struck me
Same
as something that you all sitting through all the talk about, I hadn't realized the amount we were putting into motels.
It's staggering, and the other thing is the cost has gone up because we had about 110 million of it between the start of the pandemic and the end of 2022. But we've spent 54 million just in 9 months of this year, so we're paying more for beds, and we're probably maybe housing fewer than we did in the pandemic. People would say, well, the motel owners are willing to provide the rooms, and they are, because we bought some of these motels at 200 million.
Guaranteed.
Well,
It's a lot of money.
buying motels, we're sitting there now, and what you hear from Gus is he can't buy motels because at $146 a night, they won't sell, they won't
Because
sell their
they're
motels.
generating so much income.
Because they're generating so much income. And if we could get them out, if we could stop the program and you could depress the price of those, they would sell them and we could make long-term
If you were,
housing.
if you were renting 20 rooms out of 30 in a motel, you don't go in and pay the going rate, you go in and negotiate down a lower rate. I mean, 100, can you imagine paying $150 for those, some of them dumps that they were renting?
Well, Bobby,
To
what,
put it bluntly.
Well, actually,
Already
I was talking to a house member, and he relayed that a young man who had aged out of foster care, but was given a motel room at a local motel. And he said he wasn't going to stay there because of the drug problems. And he said he opted to stay in his car as opposed to using the motel. So it's not a good situation. And I know that it's been difficult, but I wanted to let you know that there will be an amendment, and I will get up and speak and say that, this reflects our deliberation, but the committee still believes that our decision and our balance was good.
I would just say from my vantage point, the programs at the federal level going away, cutting 3 squares, in which I know we can't restore all the money to them, but that's $6.5 million a month to people under 185% of poverty, which I think is just food to me is basic.
Well, we are going to have to make some very difficult decisions as we get through the 24, and particularly as they look at base costs. And so some of the things that we had thought we made progress on, like the 10 million on the not withstood amount to transfer on VHCB, got replaced with a one-time, like the 10 million one-time. And so I think even the 27th, 53rd week got put on one time. And, at some point between one time or whatever, but we've got to be very, very careful that some of these things that we need to do represent ongoing commitments. And so it's a matter of trying to, as I keep saying, where do you want to put that first dollar? And that's the only other amendment that I'm aware of, and that would be Wednesday. But since I had noticed that that's going to be the amendment, I thought I would use the opportunity to get
It's
some
nice of them to
advance.
give you notice.
Yeah, it was yes, I agree with you, Senator.
I didn't get notice.
No, we did not.
Yeah, better than you got.
Yeah.
And Senator Brock and I had talked, and so I knew what position he would take relative to the choices. And obviously, those would not have been his preferred choices, to be honest. So, as I said, it reminded me of the song from Meatloaf, I want you, I need you, but there ain't no way I'm really gonna love you. And that's what this budget is. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
No.
And we'll just continue to do our best. So with that, I suggest then we adjourn the
So
meeting.
are we gonna meet earlier?
9:15, we have to meet.
You have a meeting.
What?
You have a meeting on Tuesday at
9.
9.
I only got.
On
No,
your
that got
phone.
canceled. Is that the leadership? It's,
So that's fine.
that's what? Oh, I double booked myself?
I don't know if it'll take the full half hour. You could plan on 9:15.
Oh, I told that reporter from whatever.
I think you have to vote no. I mean, that's all my message. is
You know, I mean-
vote no, so I don't know
Say no
why.
to this one.
You got another vote
You
now?
can just leave that one. right?
Another no vote on the Unaffordable Heat Act.
Okay. Well, I'll just try to figure it out.
Alright, you could vote this from 9:15.
Just make sure you roll those up for me so I can heat
I
my
keep,
house.
I keep
next winter.
recycling. I think you just go through the
So,
recycling bin.
Minnie, I'm gonna adjourn for the week.
Yeah.
And
well,
I'm sure everybody will be here by 9 o'clock, except maybe Senator
Except me,
Sears.
I,